So, I am watching something totally different today. Just a variation is very much better. Yeah. So, I just got the first one that happened to be to fit in my screen fully. I don't know why, but I really like that. I just hate the ones that just have something left over. Those black bars. It is a very long movie, but it seems quite interesting so far. It's I got it from the comedy genre. It does have comedy, but doesn't try to be. Just out there so much. Well, maybe someone does. It's really about the an awkward one. So it's called The Story of Yonosuke. Yeah, Yonosuke himself is quite awkward. So the comedy comes from there. Whereas someone he meets out and is is sort of an opposite, but kind of. I guess if he's an one is an introvert and one is an extrovert, I suppose. So the comedy comes from different parts in a way, and you know it's kind of funny that he said at one point it was magical transition from bookshelf to kissing, and obviously there are expectations it plays with that aren't talked about, but even just that, calling it a transition between bookshelf and it's just bizarre, but comedic as well, obviously at the same time. This so far I thought it's been quite interesting, and there were these really uh, yeah, I didn't think they did much samba dancing in Japan, but apparently they might. I don't know. I had no idea academic clubs were so involved, even so varied. So it's practically a carnival. Yeah. So far, yeah, I'm interested. So far, it's only the first 25 minutes I've watched. There's 2 hours 15 minutes left. So yeah, it's quite long, but yeah. What wasn't magical though, it was really confusing, was the transition. Yeah, after that, what's the point? He went from fooling around to having a daughter straight away. Didn't think this movie was going to be you know difficult to understand at any point, but that was quite confusing. Like, how the heck uh, 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 some 18 years must have passed or something. It's really bizarre. Uh, no, yeah. What's mostly bizarre is that he didn't really change himself. Of course, he didn't even bother, using makeup to age him or anything. Nope. He's reprimanding an 18-year-old when he looks like one himself. Yeah, bizarre. I gotta say, he is incredibly naive. I mean, the face he makes straight after someone he hasn't met 5 minutes prior. Uh, saying that they're friends just because he wants to refer him to get a discount. I mean, how naive can one be? How is friendship really formed in 5 minutes? Makes no sense. The way he says, friendship, eh? Friendship, right? Or so. I just. And that was after he told him that he thinks he's falling in love with um, what seems like, well, they call her a party girl at any rate. And then the guy convinced him that he'd only make her fall in love with him if he drives. I don't think that's how things work, surely, but okay. I suppose that's the inherent comedy in it. I mean, it is comedic in a way, but it's also sort of tragic. I mean, he's so naive, like, you know. Also, I have no idea what they did earlier actually, because um, the the first uh, female to be introduced is still there at university, and they seem to be in the same year as well. So I'm not sure what. I mean, I thought that some 18 years passed, but clearly they didn't. He just this Yonosuke seemed to find a job as a porter out of nowhere. Didn't even say anything about that. It's a bit strange that they did that. I mean, what's the reason he just suddenly became a porter? Just barely talked about for 5 minutes as well. Well, anyway, I suppose these sort of films aren't there to have, I suppose, necessarily a solid story, but ideal they do, I mean, still. The problem also with this, and there aren't many problems to be fair. It's sort of, it's one large movie with loads of stuff in it. It seems nothing specific though. Unlike what was it called again? That Taiwanese movie where a Chinese and a Taiwanese meet. Uh, I'm not very great at remembering. Anyway, yeah, that one. There was a comment on it. That one had a more, well, a pseudo specific purpose. I mean, it was sort of like a device where they wanted to find someone, etc. But in the end, that wasn't really the point of the entire movie at all. Here, on the other hand, there's no device. There's only a person and everyone around them. But that's not really. I mean, it's not a device per se. But in a way, it's similar to this, except it's well, it focuses more on this person as opposed to hypothetical person that someone wants to find and such. Um, the problem, though, is that there's a lot of people, a lot of strangers. Sometimes they come in out of nowhere, and like the person that came at their house, all dressed in black. Um, and she even mentioned that they broke up at one point, and I couldn't remember what it was from. I couldn't remember who she was. I don't know if it's perhaps just due to different clothing and such. But even before they mentioned some ex that he had, they didn't seem to make it explicit at least. But he didn't seem to have any exes as far as I know. I mean, he met that one girl at the beginning, but then, from my understanding, she ended up with his friend. Not that I care about any of this, to be fair. This is really. So, I do not watch movies for this sort of thing. Um, uh, I really watch this for the comedy, for the was it it's there's a word for it in Japan with regards to the ephemerality of things, and this has it as well, I suppose. You see, I mean, I found this through the comedy genre, and it does have comedy, not laugh out loud comedy, but does. No, the only one who laughs out loud is the one who ends up engaged with him. But no, I mean, it's not very comedy just because they say, that his name has an alliteration and sounds like a comedian's name. I mean, I can sort of see what they mean, I suppose, but it's not laugh out loud comedy, obviously. But no, it still has heart though. This movie does, doesn't it? So it sort of reminds me of that Taiwanese film I watched once, but also at least after the first hour and a half or so, it turns into our little sister. It seems. I mean, sort of similar to that. Not obviously that was more about sisters, not well. Seems like he actually doesn't have siblings, so in that sense, it's not very similar. But no, it has this similar sense. Obviously, after the first hour and a half, it sort of changes direction, becomes more serious. Our little sister had a lot of seriousness. It didn't have much comedy, unlike this. This definitely has had already more comedy than Our little sister wasn't deemed to be comedic at any rate. I wasn't expecting that, but they both still have this thing that they have in Japan. I forgot what it was called again as well. That's to do with ephemerality. It's they also associate it with sakura trees, if I remember correctly. Uh, yeah, and I suppose it's usually it can be available in drama generally. I mean, good drama, not melodrama certainly. This is the type of drama that is subtle at best, really. Even the comedy isn't over the top. It's not slapstick or anything. It just is sort of, you know. Yeah, and I do like these sort of movies. I'm not sure why I don't watch more of these. Because yeah, beyond those two, I really can't remember many others that I've watched that are sort of similar. I mean, most movies have drama in them, but not I guess the subtle kind. I don't know. Most movies also have though an objective. Yeah, and I don't know. It sort of takes away the subtle drama approach when you have an objective. If you do not have an objective, then the drama just unfolds however it unfolds. But if you do have an objective, then everything that happens is centered around an objective, presumably, even if it's a sort of shallow device, like in that Taiwanese film. I mean, it was a prepared objective, but anyway, yeah. And by the way, what is weird about this protagonist, shall we say? I think we could say he is the protagonist. I mean, his name isn't on the title, so yeah. What is weird about him is that he is so awkward, right? And yet, he is somewhat of an intro. Well, that's the thing. He seems to be sort of both in a way. Um, but yet he ends up with so many people. I mean, he ends up knowing so many people, in this movie. So it's strange because introverts don't normally do that. They don't end up with this circle of friends, possibly multiple partners implied anyway. It's strange. He is strange. And yeah, I finished it, and it's a strange one, certainly, right? I mean, the character is strange, but the film as a whole is strange as well because the way it's presented. I mean, all right. So at least it didn't have many other negatives. So it had about what, like three negative sort of events, or you could say serious events. I mean, one might say that you know it's not entirely sure why they included them. I mean, they could have not included them, and it would just have the happy-go-lucky sort of protagonist and all the variety of people he meets. But no, they included them. They crucially, of course, made a decision not to include visually a pivotal scene. Now, the thing is, though, they seem to think that they should do this in a very non-linear manner, clearly. And it was a bit strange. You see, even at the beginning, clearly I didn't realize it was going to be non-linear. Clearly, it is. There were many scenes that were non-linear, and they were confusing. They should have at least done something that indicated it's a flashback to the future. So, because yeah, it wasn't very obvious. They were very often. I mean, at the end, then they were, but they weren't as such at the beginning or halfway through. Often you don't know whether it was going to be or not. You know. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. It's sort of a reflective of life itself. He was sort of still naive. He remained naive, but I don't know. I guess you could say there's a certain Pollyanna sort of element to him. I guess you could say, isn't it? He seemed awkward, and he was, but then in some instances he wasn't. It's a bit strange, as I said earlier. The way they presented it, though, yeah, this non-linear nature is, yeah, and yeah, it seems like it's a bit kind of like him, an ordinary guy. The film itself isn't very well known. It seems it's kind of funny that it was named the third best film in this um 23rd Japan Film Professional Awards. The third best film at the 23rd awards. I guess there's an alliteration to that as well. But yeah, it's it's a sort of uneven film, but then so is life. I suppose that's the thing. Um, and he did try to do what that guy at the beginning said, with regards to dancing, because before long people die, and somehow I'm not sure honestly if he didn't really understand him. He said he didn't. He said, he'd be on the other side. He didn't seem to know what that means. I'm assuming he did though. And he really took, yeah. But later on, he just ignored him when he asked him to go to some dating program because he really did have a date, so might as well, I suppose. But seriously, I guess it did end in a sad manner, but still subtle. So I cannot say it's not a subtle thing, you know. He, it reminded me of this April, the Lie in April. Sort of a similar sort of ending, not quite, but you know, obviously it doesn't have the same thing with music, but it was yeah, it was fine mostly. I think. I mean, clearly it's not very well known, but it's certainly better than most recent films I've seen. Let's just say, right? Maybe not as great as Our Little Sister, but it's still thereabouts. It's a good ordinary film. Yeah, why not?